Have you ever woken up from a dream and felt like you just lived a whole other life? Like a life where things just didn't make sense?
Yeah.
Where gravity didn't work right, or maybe your teeth were falling out.
Yeah.
That's a weird feeling, right? You're totally out of control. Like you're just along for the ride in some bizarre movie
Yeah.
playing behind your eyelids.
Totally.
Well, today we're diving deep into those bizarre movies, into the fascinating world of dreams.
Okay.
And our guide for this deep dive is an article we're calling Text12. This article looks at how our understanding of dreams has evolved over time. And it asks a really interesting question.
Yeah.
How much control do we actually have over these nighttime adventures? So basically, how much say do you, our listener, actually have in what happens in your dreams?
That's exactly it. Our mission today is to explore what this article, Text 12, tells us about the current scientific thinking on dreams. And we'll trace how these ideas have changed, starting with those early interpretations, moving through some of the more scientific explanations, and finally landing on this really cool idea that maybe, just maybe, we can actually guide our own dreams.
I love that. So it's like we're going on a guided tour through the history of dream research.
Right.
First, we'll dig into those historical perspectives, like the big difference between Freud's idea that dreams are full of hidden meanings and that later idea that they're just random brain activity.
Yeah.
And then we'll fast forward to the present and talk about how scientists today view dreams, particularly the idea that dreams might act like an emotional regulator for our minds.
Uh-huh.
We'll get into the brain science behind dreaming and how that connects to our emotions.
Okay.
And in the end, we'll tackle this mind-bending concept of actually influencing our dreams, using the work of Rosalind Cartwright as our guide. So are you ready to unpack all of this?
I am. Let's get started.
All right, let's do it. So let's start with the way Text 12 outlines the evolution of our thinking on dreams. For decades, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory was really the dominant view.
Right.
He believed that dreams weren't just random images, but that they were a disguised way for our unconscious desires and fears to express themselves. So picture it like this.
Here.
Your dream is a secret code, and all of your deepest feelings are hidden within symbols.
I like that. A secret code.
Right. And then the whole point of dream interpretation was to try and crack that code.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I dreamt about a snake. What does that mean? You need a dream dictionary to figure out if the snake represents betrayal or just a slippery situation. But as Text 12 points out, by the late 1970s, a very different scientific perspective emerged. Neurologists started to think of dreams as basically mental noise. So in this theory, dreams are just random byproducts of your brain doing some necessary housekeeping while you sleep. Like, it's similar to the static you hear between radio stations, just random, meaningless stuff.
That's a good way to put it. It was a very biological, very mechanical understanding of dreams. They were just these leftover bits from neural repair.
Just meaningless noise.
Right. But as Text 12 highlights, current research is pointing towards a much bigger role for dreams. The main theory now is that dreams work like a kind of emotional thermostat for our minds. So while your conscious awareness is basically offline during sleep, your dreams might be super important for regulating your mood and processing your emotional experiences.
And this is where Rosalind Cartwright comes in, right?
Yes.
Text 12 introduces her as a key figure who believes that dreams are not just something that passively happens to us. She thinks that we might be able to actively engage with them to improve our sleep and overall well-being.
Yeah.
And there's this quote from her that I just love. It's your dream. If you don't like it, change it. Such a simple yet powerful idea.
It really is. It captures this whole idea of having agency, even within our dreams.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's get into what's happening in the brain when we dream. Text 12 talks about some interesting findings from brain imaging studies.
All right.
So there's this researcher, Dr. Eric Nossinger, whose work shows that during REM sleep, that's the sleep stage when we have those super vivid dreams, our brains are just as active as they are when we're wide awake,
Wow.
right? I always picture the brain kind of powering down for the night like a computer going to sleep mode, but apparently it's still working hard.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Our bodies might be resting, but certain parts of our brains are really active during REM sleep.
Interesting.
But as Text 12 clarifies, this activity isn't the same across the whole brain. The limbic system, which is deep inside the brain and often called the emotional brain because it processes feelings like fear, joy, and sadness, is super active during dreams.
So the emotional center is firing on all cylinders while we dream. What about the logical part of our brain, the part that helps us think things through?
Well, the prefrontal cortex, That's the part at the front of the brain, the center of our intellect and reasoning, the part that helps us make decisions, tends to be less active during REM.
Huh.
And this might be why our dreams often feel so illogical and bizarre. The part of our brain that usually keeps things coherent and rational is taking a break.
That makes so much sense. It's like the emotional side is in charge while the logical side is off duty.
Exactly.
So if our emotional brain is revved up and the logical brain is taking a back seat, that paints a pretty clear picture of dreams as prime time for processing emotions. And there's this quote from Dr. William Dement, the sleep researcher from Stanford, that really highlights this connection between dream emotions and our waking life.
Oh, I know that one.
He said, "We wake up from dreams happy or depressed, and those feelings can stay with us all day."
Yeah.
I'm sure many of you listening can relate to that lingering feeling after a really powerful dream. You just wake up feeling different.
Absolutely. Think about those mornings when you wake up with this unexplained anxiety or feeling strangely happy. You can often trace those feelings back to a vivid dream.
Totally.
And Text12 connects this to Rosalind Cartwright's observations of her patients. She noticed that many people tend to have more negative or upsetting dreams early in the night, but as they sleep, their dreams shift towards more positive themes before they wake up.
That's fascinating. It almost seems like our brains use the dream state to work through and maybe even resolve the emotional stuff we've collected during the day.
Exactly. And Text12 suggests that because we're so focused on external stuff during the day, all those events and tasks, we don't always fully process the emotional meaning of our experiences right away.
It's like we're too busy to feel.
In a way, yes. And it's not until we're dreaming that our brain really digs into those deeper feelings.
So it's like our brain waits until it has more internal space when we're not busy with the waking world to sort through the emotional mess.
That's a great way to put it.
And this brings us to the really exciting part. The idea that we can take a more active role in this emotional processing.
Yes, and Cartwright is a big believer in that. She thinks we don't have to be passive recipients of our recurring bad dreams. She actually says we can learn to control them.
Okay, but how do we do that? It sounds kind of impossible, like trying to steer a car that's driving itself.
Well, she has a method. It involves a few steps. The first step is, as soon as you wake up from a bad dream, you need to pinpoint exactly what upset you about it. So think about the specific elements, the images, the scenarios that triggered those negative feelings.
So like a post-dream debriefing.
Exactly.
I can do that.
Once you've identified the upsetting parts, the next step is to visualize a different ending, a more positive or desirable outcome. It's like you're mentally rehearsing a better version of the dream while you're awake.
I see. So you're preparing your mind for a different resolution. But what happens when the bad dream comes back?
Well, Cartwright says that next time that bad dream starts, try to wake yourself up just a little bit, just enough to influence what happens.
Oh, okay.
It's not about fully waking up.
Gotcha.
It's more about reaching this in-between state, a kind of halfway point between sleep and wakefulness, where you're still dreaming but also aware enough to gently guide the dream. She suggests that some people find that focusing on one specific thing in the dream, or maybe trying to slightly move a part of their body, like a finger, without fully waking up, can help create this connection to conscious control.
Wow, that sounds tricky, like trying to conduct an orchestra while half asleep.
It definitely takes practice and patience, as Text12 makes clear. You won't master it overnight. But Cartwright's research shows that if you keep trying, you can learn to steer those bad dreams towards a more positive ending.
That's pretty amazing. The idea that we can actually have some control over the negative stories our minds create at night. But Text 12 also talks about when we should actually worry about our dreams.
And that's important. Cartwright's view is that most people shouldn't be too concerned about their dreams unless they're constantly disrupting sleep or causing a lot of distress when they wake up, like anxiety or panic.
That makes sense. I guess a weird dream here and there is probably just normal,
Right.
part of the sleep cycle.
Exactly. And Text12 mentions that stress in our waking life can affect our dreams too.
Oh, right.
Cartwright noticed that during times of heightened anxiety in society, like during terrorism or economic instability, more people have nightmares. It's as if all that collective anxiety seeps into our individual dreams.
That's a bit scary, actually.
Yeah.
But what about people who have frequent, really intense nightmares? What does Cartwright suggest they do?
In those cases, she strongly recommends talking to a therapist or a sleep specialist. Nightmares that are really bad and won't go away can sometimes point to underlying psychological issues that need professional help. But for most people, Text 12 reassures us that our brains are actually pretty good at processing difficult emotions on their own through sleep and dreams. It's like the old saying, sleep on it.
Yeah,
You often wake up feeling a bit better after your brain has had a chance to process things.
that's true. So to sum it all up, our understanding of dreams has come a long way.
It really has.
We don't see them as just random brain activity or hidden messages from the unconscious anymore. Now we're starting to understand how important they are for keeping our emotions balanced.
Right.
And the most fascinating part is that maybe we have more control over them than we thought.
Yeah, and that brings up a really interesting question for you to consider. If we can actually influence our dreams, and knowing how closely dreams and emotions are linked, could shaping our dreams be a way to manage our emotions in our waking life?
Wow, that's a big question.
It is. It's something to think about as you fall asleep tonight.
Definitely gives you something to think about as you enter your own personal nightly theater of the mind.
Haha, it's a good one.
We hope you'll think about your own dream experiences in light of everything we've talked about today.
Yes.
Maybe tonight, you could even try rewriting the ending of a dream that's been bothering you.
I like it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.